Let's get into it. Sold Not For Sale podcast. Coach Colin here. We got Joe Rogan talking to Josh Dubin, the man who brought this dude onto Joe Rogan's podcast. Advocate for NYC criminal justice reform, arrested for murder. That is to put it lightly. He was found with a head and arms, and I think maybe some legs too, inside of his freezer. Pretty big freezer, I have to say. Now, usually Josh Dubin brings on some great people onto the podcast, men who have been wrongly convicted. They stay positive while incarcerated. They get out. They're wrongly convicted. It's a massive, teary-eyed success story. But this time he brought on Sheldon, and Sheldon was guilty of his crimes. And Sheldon should have stayed in jail a lot longer, but Josh decided that a poor black man shouldn't have to stay in jail that long and decided to get him out early. So it resulted in this, quite honestly. We're going to hear what Josh has to say about this whole thing right now because he's been relatively silent about it. Let's get into it.
So I guess we just get right into it. The last case that we talked about, we had a very unfortunate incident happen after the podcast, about a month later.
Yeah.
The gentleman beheaded somebody.
Allegedly, yes.
Allegedly. Yeah. There's a lot of allegedlys, but
yeah,
there's so many crazy things to that case. The craziest thing was him trying to fool the security cameras with a wig. Like, I guess he didn't know how high resolution cameras had gotten over the 25 years that he was in jail.
I mean, apparently there's a lot he didn't know. Yeah. The only reason I say allegedly is because I'd be a bit of a hypocrite if I started calling him guilty before he has a trial. But
of course,
based on the surveillance,
it doesn't look good.
What do they say in Texas? It ain't too shiny.
It was so crazy because we went out with him that evening. We brought him to the comedy club. He was hanging out with us in the green room, and then the news broke, and then the comics were all like, "Hey man, what the what the are you doing bringing that guy around?" I'm like, "Well, we didn't know."
I mean.
Who could have known he was going to do that other than him?
I'm as shocked over it now as I was in the moment. I mean, yeah, I don't, there are no words. I went through, it's really not funny. I mean, I'm only laughing out of sort of nervousness, I guess.
Of course.
And, I mean, yeah, I was in St. Louis of all places, which is only memorable because that's where I was when someone called me and said, "Have you looked at the news?" And I said, I was in court and I was on a break. And, I called him a miracle on this show. And the media shoved that straight up my ass. I mean...
Of course, but that's what they're going to do. Well, he was the only guy that you had ever brought in that was actually guilty, that you felt was in jail for too long. He got a 50-year sentence, correct?
70.
70, and he was reduced to 25?
It was just basically time served. He did about 30 years, and they resentenced him. Look, I would be I've had a lot of time to think about this, and I know you and I have discussed it privately, and I kind of went into a hole after this. This didn't happen to me. A lot of people say, "I'm so sorry." But some people have said other things that weren't very nice. Yeah. But the people that I, regard their opinion were sorry that it didn't happen to me. My first thought was, I had two thoughts, was that poor guy that got killed. And it was a gruesome murder. It wasn't just beheaded. I think he was dismembered completely.
Well, he was trying to get rid of the body, right?
Allegedly. And my first thought was for him and his family. And then I think my second and third thought, maybe in tandem, was this tore down 50 years of work that a lot of people have fought really hard for and really need. And I felt like I let you down. You've given us an amazing platform to get stories out for people that really need help. I think we've made a ton of progress. We've got some exonerations as a direct result of this.
Yeah,
show.
you didn't let me down at all.
No,
I didn't. I appreciate that you felt like that. It didn't feel like that to me at all. It was just, listen, there's a reality of prison life. There's a reality of being incarcerated. There's a reality of taking a person who's convicted of a violent crime and putting them in jail with violent people for 30 years. There's just a reality. And, you know, I don't know what history he had with this man that he allegedly killed, but, you know, it's like you can only take so much.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know. My first emotion, this is from me and my therapist, my first emotion is usually like guilt. So once I took a little bit of time and thought it through, I mean, of course, I come on your show and then you're, splattered all over the news for something not positive.
Good news is I don't watch the news, and I don't pay attention, and I don't listen to anything anybody writes about me, so it didn't bother me at all.
You're rare. So look, for me, I have to take a hard look at what I'm doing and take the mirror out and look straight in it and say, like, what did I do wrong?
You did nothing wrong.
Well,
I don't think you did anything wrong. You just listen. The man had great qualities. He like when you talk to him, he's very intelligent, very nice guy. He just thought he could get away with getting payback on somebody.
Yeah, look, that's super gracious of you. I'm not whether I did something wrong or not. I typically go to blame. And that's something that that's a kink I have to work out in my personality. But let me just articulate it because I think the platform is so important to me and getting these stories out is so important to me. And I think that where I've landed is that he didn't let me down. Look, I was the public face of his resentencing. There was a lot of great people involved. And it wasn't just from the defense side. The Center for Appellate Litigation had some amazing people working on his case. The District Attorney of Manhattan agreed to this. So on paper, even in their personal interactions with him, there was nothing that raised a red flag for anyone. He didn't let anyone down if he did this, people will draw their own conclusion. He'll have a trial. He didn't let anyone down if he did this but himself and the people that still need help. And I have to swallow the jagged pill that this work comes with some letdowns. The recidivism rate for people that have served long sentences like that is less than 1%. It just happened to happen on a case where I was involved. I have no...
Is it really that low?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. If you look at exonerations, resentencings of people that have been incarcerated for more than 20 years, it's that low. And you know, the harsh reality is that if you put someone on a public platform and they then do what he supposedly did, it's going to make headlines. I realized something, though, that, look, no one could have imagined what's in the dark recesses of that man's soul, whether it's, his group home upbringing and abuse, the prison experience. It's not to make an excuse. He did it if he did it. If he's convicted and he did it, that's on him. What I'm guilty of is giving a guy a second chance. And I'm why am I reluctant to say this? I can't apologize for giving someone a second chance and then, they squander it. All I can do is say, well, what could I have done better? I mean, I have a deep understanding, I think, of what incarceration means. I mean, I read this book. I always get his name confused. Is it Henry Jack Abbott or Jack Henry Abbott? It's called In the Belly of the Beast when I was in college. And it's a series of letters that this inmate wrote to Norman Mailer. It's a fascinating book. And about what incarceration does to somebody from the standpoint of the practical day-to-day, from the deep psychosis inducing confinement and everything else. And 2 days before the book was released and it was reviewed by the New York Times, the guy snapped and killed someone in the East Village. And no one will know what it is like to be in there. And again, I don't want to offer this as an excuse, but what it has caused me to do is reevaluate and say, look, maybe I need to take a much closer look at what sort of mental health counseling these folks are getting. Like Sheldon, I arranged for him to be speaking to a trauma therapist. Should I have been on him more to be going to those appointments? maybe.
What was the circumstances with the guy that he allegedly killed?
I don't know if I'm doing it just because I'm distancing myself from it subconsciously, but I don't know all the circumstances. But apparently this was someone he knew from childhood and from in prison. I've heard rumors and, stories about the guy threatened his son to, he slashed Sheldon when they were in prison. I don't know if you remember, Sheldon had this big gash across his face. But I don't know. And I frankly don't want to know at this point because someone lost their life. And that, I think unfortunately for my mental health, I just wear that stuff. If I felt even remotely responsible for that, which I do, and, I can be at peace with it, but I didn't cause that death. And I don't, I can take some responsibility for it in the sense that what could I do going forward? Whether it's people that are being exonerated for crimes they didn't commit, or if it's people that are getting resentenced, you cannot undo decades of confinement. You just can't. And they all need mental health counseling, all of them. And I have to put that on my shoulders. I just do because, they all have issues and they come out and need mental health counseling. And
Now, that's the gist of him talking about it. Then he gets into the whole mental health thing. Even his let me just replay that last little part. Like, listen to, no, that's too far.
For it in the sense that what could I do?
Like he's just saying things like, even if I feel responsibility for it, which I do, and I'm just gonna have to be at peace with it. And it's like, man, you should have to learn everything, And you know why I say that? Tim Kennedy actually did a podcast once, and he talks about throwing a grenade into a house, thinking that there was a terrorist there, and there was, but he ran out, and there was women and children in there, and he hit those women and children with that. It was a frag. Hit them with a lot of pressure. They were in a concrete room. They absorbed all the pressure. It was crazy. Children, small children. And he knew that as a man, taking the brunt of that responsibility, he made sure that they got to the infirmary. And not only that, went and saw them so he could see what he did. And this guy being like, oh, I think I'm just distancing myself psychologically. It's like, man, you should be really looking into that a lot more. You should actually find out all the ins and outs of that situation. And I say that as, going really hard on him, but at the same time, I do see his heart in all this. You can tell he's a little, there's probably some of it where he's like, oh man, I'm in trouble. I kind of caused this because they were just going to keep him in jail, where he could just be in jail. He could study, he could learn, he could become more successful in that realm. I don't mean like successful in jail, but you can study, you can get more degrees, you can learn a whole bunch, you can mentor people. There's things that you can do. He should have looked into this guy a lot more, And just one thing before I go on. Allegedly, hold on.
Carrying cleaning supplies and a full black garbage bag in and out of this building. Police were called to apartment 6G after a neighbor heard gunshots and saw Johnson in and out of the apartment. She told the building super. When police entered the apartment, they found a man's torso and a foot inside a bin. Law enforcement sources say after seeing Johnson on surveillance footage, they searched his apartment and found the victim's legs, arms, and head in the freezer. That's very...
Hey, man. Hey. Allegedly, they found arms. And right there, if I say that to you, if I say, hey, this guy, I think he killed somebody. You go, why? Well, they found arms. You go, oh, okay, done. We're done. Okay, I guess you're right. And I go, no, we're not done. I say they found a head. They found multiple body parts in his freezer. There's no allegedly, man. Listen, officer, I don't know what happened. I had a friend come by. He said he wanted to go to the washroom. I saw him go into the kitchen. I don't know what happened. He left, and all of a sudden there was just legs and a head. And I was like, oh, man, what's all this? And it didn't taste like the regular legs and head that I keep inside my freezer at times. So I was like, I don't know. I'm being framed. I'm being framed. Somebody just left the head. Sir, somebody just I wonder how because you know this Sheldon guy, he's actually said that he's not guilty. He's claiming he's not guilty. And he's just in court this like somebody, I mean, this is how this works against the black man. I mean, somebody went ahead and left this head inside of my freezer. And he was probably white and he was probably a Trump supporter. I mean, where's Alvin Bragg? I know Alvin Bragg. Alvin, can you help me out? It was probably a Trump supporter left the head inside there. And the legs, yeah. I mean, where was the other foot? Where were the hands? I don't know. I don't got them. Very weird stuff, man. To say allegedly is out of control. I'll just show you that whole thing really quick. Just so you guys, in case anybody's not caught up on this whole thing.
Today, police arrested a man named Sheldon Johnson. He is a criminal justice activist, and he boasted about turning his life around after getting out of prison as recently as going on shows like the Joe Rogan podcast. Now tonight, he is back in handcuffs, and he's facing murder charges. News 4's Ida Siegel is in Highbridge, where the crime scene investigators are still looking for evidence.
That's 48-year-old Sheldon Johnson being...
They're looking for evidence still. Hey. Start with the head. There you go. Oh, I'm just looking for some evidence here, Chief. How about the guy's noggin that's in the freezer? I know, I just wanted to sweep the area again. Just get the body parts. We're good. Oh, I just wanted to see if I could find any hair. I'm going to do a little... God damn it, Johnson. You're always doing too much. Just get the body parts. The torso matches the head. That's all we got to figure out, okay? I'm just looking for that other foot, sir. Oh, my God.
walked off in handcuffs, yelling to reporters that he didn't do what cops say he did. Murder, manslaughter, and criminal possession of a weapon. It's a shocking set of charges for a man most recently known for this.
I had a wife, I had family still, my son was growing up. He was hearing stories about my so-called notoriety.
That's Johnson appearing on the popular Joe Rogan podcast, talking about his efforts to reform himself and help other kids detach themselves from gang life, a job he's uniquely qualified for after spending 25 years in prison for attempted murder as a high-ranking member of the Bloods.
Prison does two things to you. It brings out the best or it brings out the worst.
But police say this is also him, here on Summit Avenue Tuesday night, carrying cleaning supplies and a full black garbage bag in and out of this building. Police were called to apartment 6G after a neighbor heard gunshots.
So that's all the part you guys heard already. You know what I mean? Some people come home and you're like, yo, bro, what'd you do this weekend? And they're like, bro, it was like a movie, bro. Bro, my life is like a movie, bro. No, unless you have body parts in a bag and you're cleaning someone's apartment because you just shot them, your life's not a movie. Sheldon's life is a movie. I'll give you that, Sheldon. Your life is 100% a movie. This guy's on the biggest podcast in the world. And then 30 days later, the guy has range. I'll give him that much. He has a lot of range in life. I'm going to go be on the biggest podcast in the world, okay? But then after that, I'm going to go see an old friend about a scar on my face. That's a movie. What's going on with you? You good? Black Wick. What's going on, Black Wick? He cut me on my face and I'm just back. I'm going back for a little payback. Guy's name was Colin too, that he took the life of. His name is Colin Smalls, I believe. I just wanted to mention that because he's a Colin, and it's always sad when a Colin passes away. We're great people, okay? We're great people. You have no idea. He even spelled it with one L like I do. I couldn't ask for more than that. It's just ridiculous. And then again, just as back to Josh Dubin, he should just be looking into these guys more. That's all he should be doing. Sit down and talk with the dude, because again, when this guy was on Joe Rogan's podcast, he was telling stories about oh, there was a guy, I was at a jail and there was a guy who owed me some money and, he was with his girlfriend. So I pistol whipped him and then I robbed him and I took his girlfriend's stuff. And, it's just morals and values. You know what I mean? Listen, if you hear someone from the streets talk about morals and values, stay away from that guy. I'm telling you, stay away from that guy. Okay? If they're doing street stuff and they're talking about morals and values, I've been around guys like that. They're very serious. Okay? I'm just saying. And so he's talking about that. And then he's telling Joe about like, oh, it's my I went to jail, my son's in jail, my dad went to jail, his grandfather went to jail, his grandfather is his dad is African, grandfather is African. So he was talking about how there's this bias towards black men being in prison, but then he brings up his grandfather who was in Africa, who was in prison there, and it had nothing to do, he's Nigerian, had nothing to do with white people. He made a lot of excuses, and Josh should have just looked into him more. He should have just been like, who is this guy actually? Like, is this guy actually ready to come out? And then also just go, why did they give him 70 years? Why did they give him so many years? You look into that and you're like, oh, because when he tells the story on Joe Rogan's podcast, I'm telling you, go check it out. He just talks about what did they say in the Chappelle show back in the day? What did Charlie Murphy say about Rick James? He was a habitual line stepper. That's exactly what this guy was. Habitually line stepping. Didn't care. Eventually, some judge was just like, oh, you've been doing this your whole life. You just have to stay in jail for a long time. And Josh, being a Democrat, being in New York, had this rosy colored tint to this guy and said, you know what? I should be able to get this guy out. This guy shouldn't have to stay in there that long. Not so. Go send that judge an apology letter. That judge is going to be like, you didn't read the case? You didn't read the case? Oh, I read the case. It's just that he's black, and sometimes black people, they're not treated fairly. The judge is probably going to be like, hey, did you read the case? No, I just, he's black, and I just wanted to get him out before he needed some more time. Let's be honest. This dude who decapitated someone, it's not even just decapitated, because when you say decapitated, you're talking about somebody who was like, and they did some wild stuff. He didn't do that. He was very quiet. He was like, I have to get out of this. And he was just like, oh, okay. Put this in the bag. Okay, let's get one of the arms. That's different. That's wild. That's sociopathic. That's psychopathic. The guy needed to be in jail longer. And yes, Josh is 100% right. He needed some more mental health treatment. 100%. He hit the nail on the head with that one. The guy needed more counseling, whatever you could do. And that should be available. And it should be available to a very high standard of professional should be available for guys coming out of that, because, I'm not going to compare them to war vets because one is honorable and one's not. But they do come out with the same type of PTSD. They do get into the same, not the same type of altercations, but a lot of violence, a lot of death. So they need that same type of help. Joe Rogan even suggests that possibly psychedelics could help these gentlemen who are coming out of prison. And, I'm not going to be the one to watch them after they take it. I'll tell you that much. I'm not looking after Sheldon. Sheldon took how much of what? I'm leaving. Sheldon's just like, I just need to hold you for a second, my man. No, sir. No, sir. I have to go. I actually have to go. I have to go, actually. You look, what's your name? Colin? I knew a Colin once. Let me out. Anyway, guys, I'm kidding around, but not kidding around at the same time. Interesting episode. Joe Rogan, he interviews everybody, right? He has Trump on, JD Vance, and he also has a guy that's great with prison reform, Josh Dubin, because he's still great with it. He made a mistake, but he's definitely still great at it. And this is what happens sometimes, you know? Sometimes the guy you interview goes on to win the election in a landslide, and other times a guy ends up cutting people up. And no one knows where that other foot is. I don't know. Anyways, guys, like, subscribe, turn on the notifications, helps the channel tremendously. And other than that, I'm out.